right. Anthropos here with another exciting episode of You Don't Know. So don't act like you do. Yeah. We have some very compelling information for you today. This episode is going to be about Dr. Patrick Flanagan, one of the most brilliant men living on the planet today. I wrote a short paper about Dr. Flanagan, and it's also heavily interspersed with quotes, quotations, or material from Wikipedia, etc. I'll try to go like this when I'm using quotes from the Wikipedia material. I am receiving information that is staggering in its implications. It is not being beamed into my head. I am simply getting it off the internet. Here we go. Dr. Patrick Flanagan is an inventor who is 68 years old now. When Dr. Flanagan was 11 years old, I think around 1958, he won a science fair contest that was area-wide in the city of Houston, Texas, and included students of all ages up to, but not including the college level. The 11-year-old invented a device that would detect any nuclear explosion or experiment, detect the presence and location of any atomic weapon on the planet Earth, and detect the launch and location of the launch of any ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, anywhere on Earth. Okay, let me summarize that. An 11-year-old kid created a device, I guess made from parts from Radio Shack or something like that, that could detect the location of any intercontinental ballistic missile on the face of the Earth, up to and including the Russians, the Chinese, and everything like that. Imagine that. That's far out, isn't it? He used the device before the contest to locate all of the above and logged the data to prove that his device actually worked. And he won the science fair. The following Monday, the 11-year-old was summoned over the PA system by the principal of his junior high and told to report to the office because the Pentagon was on the phone. That's got to throw a little scare into you. On the phone was Vice Admiral William Francis Rayburn, Jr. of the United States Navy. Admiral Rayburn invented the Polaris nuclear submarine and later went on to become the 6th director of the CIA in 1965. Admiral Rayburn wanted to know how the boy had gotten all of the highly classified data, and Flanagan explained his device and how it worked. Admiral Rayburn made Patrick Flanagan an offer that upon turning 17 years old, he could get a scholarship to any university in the world, and that he cared to attend, and a huge sum of money if he agreed to work for them for 5 years, which the Navy basically. By this time, Flanagan was already working with some of the world's top scientists, and they warned him that if he took the offer, they would never let him go. Flanagan was already making more money than his own father and did not have that much interest in money anyway, and so he declined the offer, but negotiated a deal with Admiral Rayburn to do one another favors, i.e. share information. They developed a lifelong relationship. Here's a short list of his achievements. Dr. Patrick Flanagan invented the neurophone in 1958. It is an electronic nervous system excitation device that transmits sound through the skin directly to the brain, for which he received U.S. patent number 3393279 in 1968. Here's a quotation from Wikipedia. The invention earned him a profile in Life magazine, which called him a unique, mature, and inquisitive scientist. Flanagan has continued to develop the neurophone and is currently being sold as an aid to speed learning. Flanagan, at age 11, developed and sold a guided missile detector to the U.S. military. Age 17, gained his air pilot's license and was employed by a think tank at the Pentagon and later as a consultant to the NSA, CIA, NASA, Tufts University, the Office of Naval Research, and the Aberdeen Proving Grounds for the Department of Unconventional Weapons and Warfare. Since 1981, Flanagan has invented a series of useful devices and products based on water and specific mineral structures in the area of health. Several of these have been very successful in the marketplace. His identification of the special properties of the negative hydride ion, while once ridiculed, got serious attention when the Nobelist Chandrasekhar proposed it as a major component in far space. Several scientific papers by Flanagan about silica hydride have been published in peer-reviewed journals. Here's some more facts on the neurophone. When he developed the first neurophone, Patrick found out through experimentation that the neurophone's sound transmission works best with square waves in the ultrasound range. Humans cannot hear ultrasound, while whales, dolphins, and other animals communicate in this frequency range. Linhart found that humans also have an ultrasound organ, the saccule, which is a small bed of sensular cells in the inner ear. He was therefore able to explain how the neurophone worked many years after it was developed. Patrick developed an encoding system for sound information and, coupled with the neurophone's basic ultrasound signal, transmits them to the saccule via skin. In other words, the neurophone somehow transmits sound from your skin directly to your brain. The properties of sound are quite staggering in their implications. In the past, we've been taught that everything goes back to light. You know, that light is the basis of everything. And they're now learning that sound is actually the basis of light. So actually sound is the basis of everything. I myself have a degree, an associate's degree, associates of science degree in sound technology. So I find this quite interesting. So anyway, back to the facts. There's a lot of scientific jargon here. Then it goes on to say there are nerve connections between the saccule and certain areas of the brain, including the long-term memory area. These signals are decoded in the brain and interpreted as sounds. With the neurophone, Patrick has discovered an additional sense that has not been used so far but is available to everybody: hearing via skin and ultrasound. In other words, we have organs that are similar to a cetacean, which is a dolphin or porpoise or a whale. And we know that these animals communicate with one another over great distances. I myself was fortunate enough to swim with dolphins in Mexico. These were captive dolphins. They were kept in the ocean, and they had very good facilities there, and I rode on the backs of one of these dolphins. It was quite an amazing experience. The dolphins are very large, extremely powerful, and they seem to like people. With the neurophone, Patrick has discovered an additional sense that has not been used so far but is available to everybody: hearing via the skin and ultrasound. Patrick believes our ancestors might have communicated directly with whales and dolphins. Why else would we have such an extraordinary physiological similarity to these animals and be so fascinated by them? The neurophone makes its user a part of an oscillatory circuit, that is, a kind of radio receiver, and can actually be used for accelerated learning, as described in Gernsback's book. Patrick says a study found that with the neurophone, the learning speed is 5 times higher than with ordinary accelerated learning methods. One of Patrick's employees learned Hungarian when he had been learning information transmitted by the neurophone. He was married to a Hungarian woman while reading other unrelated material or just relaxing. So in other words, they put the lessons for this Hungarian into the neurophone and was transmitted through his skin, and while he was watching TV he learned how to speak Hungarian at 5 times the rate of the most advanced speed learning techniques on the planet. Check that out. Okay, so that is Dr. Flanagan, who is also considered a New Age scientist and wrote several books on pyramid power in the 60s. Obviously, he's not a quack, and this is not pseudoscience. Dr. Flanagan was also lifelong friends with Dr. John C. Lilly. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. Okay, we've talked about pyramid power a little bit. George Bush Sr. is actually photographed. He's quite old now, but in lounging around with some of his family, and he's holding a pyramid. And it's been speculated that he's using this pyramid to improve his health. And there's also been other experiments that have shown that if you put an apple under a pyramid just made out of wire hanger or something like that and have another apple sitting right next to it, the apple that is under the pyramid will stay fresh much longer. So there really is something to this pyramid power. It's not just a bunch of BS, okay? But now here is where it gets interesting, because we're going to start talking about the Lilly wave. And this is kind of where I'm going with this paper. We're going to broach on a subject now that is very scary and dark, and that is mind control. Does it exist or does it not? Is there such thing as mind control? Many people scoff at the idea. And so the question comes about, minus, hypnotism and hocus pocus and magic rituals and stuff like that. Is there a scientific basis for the concept of mind control? That's what we're going to discuss right now. In other words, are there scientific instruments that can entrain the brain and plant thoughts in your mind, etc.? Okay, and this is where it comes with Dr. John C. Lilly, where his contributions to science become important. So here we go. Dr. Flanagan was also lifelong friends with Dr. John C. Lilly, inventor of the Lilly wave. And the following paragraph is a description of the Lilly wave, what it does and how it works. Another friend of both Flanagan's and Lilly's, a prominent scientist, discovered that these Lilly waves are being surreptitiously injected into the power grid system of the United States and also into all TV broadcasts. This fact can be checked by anyone who owns a laboratory oscilloscope. You can get one at Fry's Electronics for less than $500 and check it yourself. So if you think that it's a bunch of BS, that the Lilly wave is not being injected into the electrical circuits of your home, then you can check out this claim by getting a laboratory oscilloscope and hooking it up to the circuit in your house to see whether or not you detect the Lilly wave. This Lilly wave is working within the circuits of your house, even if the electricity is turned off. In other words, if the electricity has been turned off by the electrical company for whatever reason, this Lilly wave is still going through the circuitry, the electrical circuits in your home. So unless you're like really off the grid, you are being subjected to the Lilly wave right now, at this very instant, as you watch this video. The Lilly wave. The Lilly wave was invented by John C. Lilly and is, in most cases, it's completely misunderstood as to its usage and effects to the thoughts and behaviors of humans. It's described as a biphasic pulse which stimulates the neurons of the brain to resonate at a certain frequency. Thus, the Lilly wave has the ability to control the brainwave patterns of the brain. There is, however, a far more advanced form and a largely unknown and suppressed purpose in the use of the Lilly wave. The water molecules within the brain can be made to resonate at a desired frequency, thus causing the electrons that comprise the brain's electrical voltages to also resonate at the same frequency. Let me repeat that. The water molecules within the brain can be made to resonate at a desired frequency, thus causing the electrons that comprise the brain's electrical voltages to also resonate at the same frequency. It is not a requirement, as is understood by the majority of science, to implant electrodes to cause the brain's water molecules to be entrained to a certain frequency. It can also be accomplished by any waveform that can penetrate the skull and cause the entrainment of the brain's water molecules. Okay, here we go. For example, radio waves emitted at a frequency of 40 Hertz, targeted at a person's brain, will entrain the water molecules to a degree of 40 Hertz, and thus the rest of the brain's electrons will resonate at such a frequency. In this manner, it is possible to stimulate and control the brain's wave patterns remotely with electromagnetism and also acoustic waves. Let me say that one more time. In this manner, it is possible to stimulate and control the brain's wave patterns remotely with electromagnetism and also acoustic waves. However, it is imperative to understand that if the wave is not biphasic, it will result in damage to the brain's neurons and thus brain damage. It is not the case that only the brain's water molecules can be entrained. It is also true of the blood sugar. Iron within the cellular structure composing the neurons of the brain and various other elements can also be entrained to resonate at a desired frequency. If a molecule is targeted by a wave which resonates at the same frequency as that molecule will explode. Sugar is a crystal, and crystals, when stressed, broken, or deformed, release an electric and an electromagnetic charge. This is known as triboluminescence. The effect of an exploding sugar crystal is quite damaging to the mind and brain. It creates extreme confusion, dizziness, and also a state best described as lack of awareness or apathy. The Lily wave frequency is a secret military application. It is known as the madness frequency. The Los Angeles riots are said to have been the first open test of its capacity to mass control anger and violent responses from the mob. Let me say that one more time. The Lily wave, the Los Angeles riots are said to have been the first open test of its capacity to mass control anger and violent responses from the mob. If that's true, and it does have a ring of truth to it, it goes a long way in explaining the Los Angeles riots, which were basically blamed on black people wilding or whatever, you know, but it just didn't make sense at the time. Everyone was aghast and wondering, what is this that's going on? Everyone's going crazy. This, if this is true, if there's any truth to this at all, then it goes a long, long way in explaining the actual nature of the Los Angeles riots and what happened, and that the people there were subjected to electromagnetic waves, possibly also acoustic waves, working in concert to achieve this madness frequency and get everyone ramped up to where they're sacking things and, you know, doing vandalism and beating people. Furthermore, there are other profound effects of entraining the brain and blood's iron molecules, one of which is to cause the iron to condense together via resonant attraction and dump within the brain. Alright, that's some really dark and scary stuff, isn't it? About the Lily wave, mind control, etc. How about some good news? Let me continue. Electromagnetic wavelengths transmit long/short/FM wavelength radio waves and TV/telephone/wireless signals or energies. They are also responsible for transmitting energy in the form of microwaves, infrared radiation, IR, visible light, VIS, ultraviolet light, UV, X-rays, and gamma rays. Now here's for the good news. The Lily wave can be neutralized via pink or white noise generators connecting to the non-voltage AC ground and neutral of your home's power grid. Let me say that again. The Lily wave can be neutralized via pink or white noise generators connecting to the non-voltage AC ground and neutral of your home's power grid, or the electrical circuits in your home. That information is staggering in its implications. In other words, you could get a white noise generator or a pink noise generator, maybe even from Radio Shack. Might be able to get one for maybe $20. And if you hook it up to the grounding of your home's electrical system, you can neutralize the Lily wave. Imagine that you put such a device on your electrical circuits in your home and had it running all the time, with the white noise and pink noise being injected into your electrical system with no detriment to the electrical system, and you wouldn't hear it or anything like that. And then all of a sudden there's a zombie apocalypse, or everyone starts going crazy and running around, going crazy, except for you and your family. You're sitting at home looking out the window going, oh my goodness, what's going on? And you realize, oh my goodness, we're the only people within 1 square mile who have this white noise generators or pink noise generators injecting into our electrical system, thereby neutralizing the effects of the Lily wave. In other words, you can shut off the mind control maybe for altogether maybe less than $50. That's something to think about. I always try to come up with solutions to give you to these big problems. Etc., etc. The goal was to find an electric current waveform with which animals could be stimulated through implanted electrodes for several hours per day for several months without causing irreversible changes in threshold by the passage of current through the tissue. Many waveforms, including the 60-CPS sine wave current, could apparently be used safely for these limited schedules of stimulation. They could not be used for the intensive long-term schedule of chronic stimulation. Electric current passed through the brain can cause at least 2 distinct types of injury, thermal and electrolytic. Electric current passed through the brain can cause at least 2 distinct types of injury, thermal and electrolytic. The technical problem in chronic brain stimulation is to stay above the excitatory threshold and below the injury threshold in the neuronal system under consideration. This result can be achieved most easily by the proper choice of waveforms and their tune time courses, and less easily by the choice of the range of repetition frequencies and train durations. The previous waveforms used in neurophysiology and in neurosurgery injured the neurons when unidirectional current passed through the brain. Dr. Lilly developed a new electrical waveform to balance the current, first in one direction and then, after a brief interval, in the other, hence biphasic. Thus, ions moving in the neurons would first be pushed one way and then quickly the other way, stimulating the neurons and leaving the ions in their former positions within the neurons. This new waveform was called a balanced bidirectional pulse pair, or the Lily wave. Microscopic studies of brains stimulated with this balanced pulse pair showed that there was no injury of the neuronal networks from this kind of waveform of stimulating current. Pulse pairs of current resulting from quasi-differentiation with passive electrical elements of a rectangular pulse. Measured at 2% of the peak, the duration of the positive pulse upward is 34 seconds and the duration of the negative pulse downward is 28 seconds for this type of stimulation. So that's basically the end of this paper, except for my conclusions, the obvious conclusions, my conclusions. I have 3 conclusions I've drawn from my research into this area. Dr. John Lilly and also Dr. Patrick Flanagan. Before I tell you, my conclusions, let me tell you one thing that I left out, and that is a friend of theirs, another scientist, is the one who discovered that the Lily wave was being injected into the electrical grid of the United States. He, was familiar with the Lily wave and everything like that, and was running some tests at an electrical, one of these relay stations, and just decided for some obscure reason to hook up an oscilloscope or a spectrum analyzer to the currents to see what was going on, and was familiar with the Lily wave and discovered its signature and relayed this information back to Dr. John Lilly and also to Patrick Flanagan, much to their dismay, I'm sure. If you've seen my recent video about the scuttlers, it's a commentary on Miles Johnston's videos, one of his latest videos, talking about the black goo and the scuttlers. And it gets into some pretty far out stuff, but I found it interesting to note that these scuttlers, these quasi-interdimensional robots or whatever they are that are shaped kind of like something between a spider and a crab, and they sit on these transistors of these high electrical transistors that go in the electrical system, that are the stations, the nodes, or the stations that supply our homes with electricity. And the idea is that they're sitting up there, and it's not that they're getting juice off the transistors to keep themselves warm or something like that, but it has something to do with communication. So that gets off into some really wild stuff right there, and that can't be, it's not scientifically proven like this information that I've given you here today. Okay, in closing, I have the obvious conclusions, my conclusions, and there are 3 conclusions that I have made. Conclusion number 1, mind control is real. It is hard science. Conclusion number 2, we the American people have been subjected to mind control, or at least entrainment and emotion influencing for our entire lives. The latest example, I believe, is the 2016 election that got so many people riled up, highly agitated, including myself, and had people turning on lifelong friends and turning on family members. You do not have to watch TV to be entrained by this technology. The waves are coming through the duplex receptacles, the power outlets in your home, unless you have a white noise generator or pink noise generator infusing that noise into the electrical circuits of your home. Conclusion number 3. Those who refute the real existence of mind control technology once exposed to the documented facts are not stupid. They are either scared, or it is not in their nature to do anything but deny this truth to themselves, regardless of decades of documented research and the fact that the intelligence agencies and military, by their own admission, have been using and developing this technology for years, or they are somehow programmed to be in denial of these scientific documented facts. In closing, if any other reasonable or rational conclusions, aside from the 3 I have made, can be reached by the discerning, adult, free-thinking mind, I would gladly like to know what they are. All of this is impersonal to me, as I am determined to look at these things objectively. There is no opinion on any of this that can hurt my feelings, as I am a real and ardent seeker of scientific truth, and none of this stuff threatens my own personal belief system in any way. There it goes. You have it there. A bit dark. Hopefully you enjoyed the information that I've conveyed during this episode of You Don't Know. And just remember, if there's one truth, one cosmic truth, the truth is you don't know. So don't act like you do, huh?